Welcome to today's custom deep dive. When you think about traditional career advice, it almost sounds like the rules to this really weird, never-ending video game.
Yeah, it really does.
Right, because you start out, you pick your character's class, which I guess in the real world is picking your college major.
Like you lock in your stats early.
Yeah, and then you just get dropped into the map. You find that first entry-level job and you just start grinding. You put in the hours, you defeat the mini bosses of middle management, and you get a promotion.
You level up.
You level up, and you just keep doing that over and over, grinding for the next level, even if, somewhere along the line you realize you aren't actually enjoying the game anymore.
Which is such a common trap. And Molly Graham actually has a specific name for that endless grinding in her TED Talk. She calls it the stairs.
The stairs, I like that visual.
Yeah, it's like you go from college to a major to a job to a promotion, and you just keep walking up one predictable step at a time. So today, we're taking Graham's insights on career coaching, and we're combining them with a pretty revealing look at how Elon Musk calculates risk.
Which is a fascinating combination, by the way.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is to dismantle this idea that the stairs are the best way to move through life. We want to figure out why the so-called safe path might actually be the most dangerous one you can take.
And figure out how to master the anatomy of a calculated risk. Because looking at Graham's concept of the stairs, it is incredibly easy to see why we all just default to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Our brains are literally hardwired to crave predictability. The stairs offer this immense psychological safety net because, well, the path is already carved out by thousands of people before you.
You know exactly what input is required to get the next output.
Right. It's safe.
It's an evolutionary preference for certainty. When you're on the stairs, the metrics for survival, in this case, professional and social survival, they're clearly defined. But the danger, which Graham points out, is that the stairs are ultimately an illusion.
How so?
Well, they're a trap for your self-worth. When you spend years climbing this predefined path, you inevitably start tying your value as a human being to those external markers.
Oh, man. Yeah, that hits home.
Right. You start believing that your worth is dictated by your job title or your latest performance rating or just exactly when your next promotion is scheduled to happen.
You become entirely obsessed with the next stair instead of looking at the staircase as a whole, or even asking if you're in the right building to begin with.
Exactly.
So, okay, we understand the psychology of why people stay on the safe stairs. It's warm, it's secure, everybody else is doing it. But to break off those stairs requires risk. And looking at our sources, the most successful people don't just leap blindly into the void.
No, they calculate.
They calculate. And this brings us to Elon Musk's perspective.
Right. Which provides this fascinating contrast to the linear progression of the stairs. In the material we reviewed, Musk is asked why he takes significantly more risk than, the vast majority of people.
And his answer isn't just, I have a higher tolerance for pain.
No, not at all. His answer is totally methodical. He applies the scientific method.
And I want to pause on that for a second, because describing the process of, blowing up experimental rockets or starting an electric car company in the mid-2000s as a scientific method, it sounds a bit strange at first.
It does sound a little counterintuitive.
Right, because usually when people talk about business risk, they're talking about expected value, calculating the mathematical probability of success versus failure.
But the distinction there is crucial. Expected value is just a financial calculation. The scientific method is fundamentally about hypothesis testing.
Okay, unpack that.
So Musk isn't just looking at the odds. He's framing the risk as a question, like can we build a reusable rocket?
Yeah.
He assesses the importance of the outcome against what is actually being risked to achieve it.
Right.
He argues that if the outcome of the hypothesis is important enough to the future, you simply must run the experiment, even if the probability of success is exceptionally low.
So if the rocket blows up, a traditional business mindset calls that a catastrophic failure. But the scientific method calls it
data. Exactly. The magnitude of the potential positive impact justifies running an experiment with a high likelihood of failure.
Okay, wait. I need to push back on this connection right here.
Sure.
Because on one hand, we have Elon Musk saying, use a scientific method, test the hypothesis, weigh the outcome against the baseline risk.
Right.
But then we have Molly Graham, whose core thesis for taking career risks is literally, and I quote, jumping off cliffs.
Yes, she does say that.
If I jump off a cliff without knowing what's at the bottom, that's not a calculated scientific experiment. That's just career suicide. So how can these two approaches possibly be talking about the same thing? Exactly what are we calculating when we jump off a professional cliff?
It sounds like a total contradiction until you look at the mechanism of why you are jumping.
Yeah.
Graham isn't advocating for random, chaotic leaps.
Okay.
She says the very first step of taking a risk, actually stepping off the edge of the cliff, requires you to ruthlessly identify the nature of your fear. And she makes this brilliant distinction between two very different types of fear.
Ah, right. The survival fear versus the ego fear.
Precisely. There is the fear that tells you, I'm scared I might run out of money and not be able to feed my family.
Which is very real.
Very real. Graham explicitly notes that you should listen to that fear. That is a valid structural variable in Musk's scientific method. You are risking your fundamental ability to survive.
So if the experiment fails there, you're ruined. That's a real tangible risk that should give you pause.
Exactly. But the second type of fear is where the illusion of the stairs comes back in.
The ego fear.
Right. The second type of fear says, I'm scared I might fail, or I'm scared I might look stupid. And Graham argues that this specific fear should never stop you.
Wait, never?
Never. In fact, you should treat the fear of failure as a giant flashing green light telling you to jump.
That is wild.
Because that fear isn't about physical survival. It's about ego survival. It's just the neurological panic of losing your hard-earned spot on the stairs.
Wow. Okay, so synthesizing Graham and Musk looks like this. You run the scientific method to ensure there's actually water at the bottom of the cliff.
Right.
You calculate the risk to your actual livelihood. If you determine you won't starve, and the hypothesis you're testing is important to your personal growth, then the fear of merely looking incompetent is irrelevant. It's just noise. You jump.
You jump. Because the outcome, discovering what you are capable of outside the confines of the stairs is important enough to risk your ego.
But surviving that jump is a completely different story. Because once you apply Musk's logic and you realize your fear is just ego and you take the leap, the immediate aftermath is rarely this glamorous cinematic success montage. The reality of stepping off the stairs is terrifying.
It's brutal. And to ground this concept, Graham shares a highly personal story in her talk.
Which I loved, by the way.
So relatable.
Mm-hmm.
At 25 years old, she was safely climbing the stairs in the human resources department at Facebook. She was competent, she knew the rules of the game, and she felt capable.
She had status.
Exactly. But then a leader from another department asked her to help start a completely new, long-term project, doing something she knew absolutely nothing about.
Naturally, people advised her against it.
Of course they did.
They looked at the safety of the HR path and told her the new project was just too risky. They were essentially begging her to stay on the stairs.
But she had this internal drive, a hypothesis she really wanted to test.
Yeah.
She kept asking herself, I wonder if I can be capable in this completely new environment.
That's her importance of the outcome.
Exactly. Learning if she could adapt and conquer something completely foreign was worth risking her current status. So she took the job. She jumped off the cliff.
And she makes it very, very clear that it wasn't an immediate success.
Not at all.
The reality of her jump was awful. She describes the first 9 months as feeling like she was literally in a free fall.
Yeah, she went from being the expert in HR, feeling totally competent, to feeling like an absolute idiot all the time.
Sitting in rooms with brilliant people, having no idea what was going on. And her tangible metrics plummeted. 6 months into this new role, she received the lowest performance rating of her entire life.
Which is the exact moment most people would abandon the experiment.
Right.
When you try something new and immediately receive negative feedback, the biological instinct is to retreat to safety. Your brain is just screaming at you that you made a mistake.
And this brings up a massive point about how we handle that instinct to retreat. Graham has a specific mantra for surviving the emotional roller coaster of becoming a beginner again. Her rule is, give it 2 weeks.
Such a powerful rule.
I really think it's vital to unpack why this is infinitely better than the standard advice we always hear, which is, to just sleep on it.
Sleeping on it fundamentally misunderstands how the human brain processes a threat to its status.
Exactly. Because if you get the worst performance review of your life, sleeping for 8 hours doesn't magically reset the neurochemistry of your panic.
No, not at all.
You wake up the next morning and your amygdala is still totally hijacked. Your brain is still flooded with stress hormones, screaming, abort mission, go back to the stairs.
That's where the give it 2 weeks rule comes in. It works because it acts as a refractory period.
A refractory period.
Right. It forces you to sit with the acute discomfort long enough for the initial physiological shock to dissipate. You're essentially giving your rational prefrontal cortex time to catch up with your emotional brain.
That makes so much sense.
You have to learn to expect the emotional freefall and structurally ignore it at the same time. It's a barometer. If you are still in absolute soul-crushing agony after 2 straight weeks of distance from a bad event, well then perhaps you need to reevaluate the data of your experiment.
Right, maybe the hypothesis was wrong.
But usually, the severe daily or hourly emotional swings settle down within that window.
It's about outlasting the panic. And for Graham, outlasting it really paid off. Because around the 9-month mark, she hit this critical turning point.
She had to lead a highly complex debate in a meeting about a nuanced part of this new project.
And she navigated it perfectly, and for the first time in nearly a year, she walked out feeling like herself again, confident and capable.
And her takeaway from that turning point is what really shatters the whole concept of linear career progression.
Hmm.
She realized that taking a calculated risk doesn't just bump you up a few steps on the staircase you were already climbing. She compares the experience to stepping into a weird elevator.
Oh, we definitely need to explain this weird elevator metaphor. It completely redefines how we should picture success.
So when you climb stairs, you're moving vertically within the same building. You're just getting slightly higher up in the same structure with the same view, playing the exact same game. But a weird elevator, as Graham describes it, doesn't just move up. It moves laterally. It skips floors. It takes you out of the building you were in and drops you into a completely different skyscraper on the other side of the city.
It fundamentally changes your trajectory.
Yes. Taking that risk didn't just make her a better HR manager. It transformed her into a completely different professional entity. It taught her how to adapt, how to learn rapidly, and what she was capable of in a way that walking up the HR stairs never could have.
And the proof is there.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time she finished her 3 years on that project, she was receiving job offers she never would have been considered for if she just played it safe.
Exactly.
But surviving that weird elevator and enduring those 2-week panic windows, it requires you to completely let go of your old identity. You can't pretend to be the expert anymore when you're suddenly dropped into a new building.
No, you can't.
You literally have to weaponize your own ignorance, which leads to Graham's final requirement for cliff jumping. You have to embrace being a professional idiot.
Which is such a brilliant reframing of what it means to be a beginner.
Right. Being a professional idiot means getting entirely comfortable sitting in rooms full of brilliant, intimidating people and asking very fundamental, basic questions.
It takes so much confidence to do that.
It really does. And Graham's absolute favorite conversational tactic, her go-to phrase is, "Sorry if this is a stupid question, but..." And as someone who loves analyzing social dynamics, I find this to be an incredible conversational hack.
It's so effective. And it works because it directly targets the ego-driven friction that usually happens in high-pressure environments.
Unpack that a bit.
Well, when you ask a basic question in a room full of experts, the implicit fear is that they will view you as incompetent. But by prefacing it with, "Sorry if this is a stupid question," you are voluntarily taking all the ego out of the room.
You're throwing yourself on the grenade of potential embarrassment.
Exactly. You completely disarm everyone. You lower the stakes.
And you trigger a very specific psychological response in the other people in the room, right?
Oh, absolutely. By asking questions in this self-deprecating, open way, you are subconsciously inviting them to step into the role of a teacher. And human beings are deeply wired to enjoy teaching others.
We love it.
We do.
Yeah.
It makes people feel smart, respected, valued. When you say, "Sorry, can you explain this?" they aren't judging your lack of knowledge. They're actually eager to demonstrate their own expertise.
So while they're feeling great about themselves for being the expert, you are quietly extracting all this incredible foundational knowledge. You absorb information exponentially faster than anyone else because you aren't wasting mental energy trying to pretend you already know it.
That's the secret. Embracing the role of the professional idiot transforms you into an extraordinary learner. And Graham makes a highly perceptive observation about the nature of these stupid questions.
Which is?
She points out that most of them aren't actually stupid at all.
Yeah, what caught my attention here is how often the questions we are most terrified to ask are the exact same ones everybody else is secretly wondering about.
Almost always.
Questions like, can you clearly define that acronym for me? Or, much more importantly, why are we actually doing this project? Or why are we even having this meeting?
Those are fundamental questions of purpose, alignment, and efficiency. But because everyone else is trapped on the stairs, terrified of sounding dumb or losing their perceived status, the professional world is just littered with these vitally important questions that simply never get asked.
It's great.
People will execute entire projects without knowing why they're doing it, just to avoid looking ignorant.
Which is madness.
It is. But by being the one person brave enough to ask the fundamental questions, you often expose the fact that the emperor has no clothes. You bring clarity to collective confusion.
Right.
Paradoxically, by being willing to look like the dumbest person in the room, you routinely become the most valuable person in the room. You're the one driving actual alignment.
So we have the mechanics of the jump. We have the mindset of the professional idiot. But all of this forces a much larger conversation about the ultimate point of taking these risks.
Nice.
If you're going to jump off cliffs, endure a 9-month emotional freefall, and swallow your pride to ask the basic questions, you really need to make sure the destination actually matters.
This addresses the final and perhaps most insidious illusion of the stairs. It's the pervasive societal idea that there is only one set of stairs in the world and only one valid definition of success.
The title, the money, the corner office.
Exactly. And Graham shares an incredibly poignant story about a friend of hers that illustrates this perfectly. This friend played the video game exactly right according to the traditional rules.
She did the grind.
She ground it out, she climbed all the way to the very top of the stairs, and she became the CEO of a marketing agency. She won. But immediately upon reaching the top and securing the ultimate title, she looked around and thought, is this all there is? She realized she was absolutely miserable.
It is a devastating realization. To spend years or decades meticulously climbing a ladder, only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall.
It's heartbreaking.
And I want to make sure we ground this for the listener, because you don't have to be a CEO to feel this kind of existential dread.
Oh, no, not at all.
It's the exact same feeling when you spend 4 years getting an accounting degree, you study late nights to pass your CPA exams, you get the prestigious job at the big firm, and at age 26, sitting in a cubicle, you realize you absolutely hate looking at spreadsheets.
Yeah.
You climb the right stairs, but you're in the wrong building. The game you won is making you miserable.
And the societal pressure in that moment is to just stay there, accept the misery, because you earned the title or you earned the degree.
Yeah.
But Graham's friend didn't accept it.
What'd she do?
She jumped off a massive professional cliff. She went from being a corporate CEO to helping people who were dying in hospice care.
Wow. From a marketing agency CEO to end-of-life hospice care, that isn't just a different staircase. That is an entirely different universe.
It really demonstrates the ultimate application of Elon Musk's core philosophy from the beginning of our analysis, weighing the importance of the outcome. Success is not a universal metric. It's deeply personal.
Right.
Musk calculates his hypotheses based on outcomes important to him, like space exploration or sustainable energy. Graham's friend realized that providing human comfort at the end of life was an outcome important enough to risk everything she had built on the corporate stairs.
It perfectly ties the two sources together. The ultimate failure isn't jumping off a cliff and getting a bad performance rating while you figure out a new project.
No.
The ultimate failure is successfully climbing a staircase that leads to a place you never actually wanted to be.
It takes profound bravery to trade the known for the unknown. It takes immense courage to make a move that might look like a step backwards or sideways to the people who are still desperately grinding up the stairs next to you.
Absolutely.
But as Graham's framework shows, you will never truly know who you are or the extent of what you are capable of until you learn how to step off the linear path and run the experiment.
Let's bring all this home. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today on this deep dive. For you listening, the core journey we've mapped out goes like this. First, recognize the trap of the stairs. Understand the illusion that a predictable linear progression automatically equals a fulfilling life.
That's step one.
Second, utilize the scientific method to evaluate your risks. Weigh the importance of a potential new outcome against the reality of what you're actually risking. And critically, separate the survival fear of going broke from the ego fear of just looking silly. Let the ego fear be your green light.
Jump when you see that light.
Third, when you do take the jump, give yourself structural grace. Utilize the give it 2 weeks rule to outlast your amygdala and survive the inevitable emotional freefall of being a beginner again.
And fourth.
Finally, find your ultimate power in becoming a professional idiot. Disarm the room, let others be the teachers, and ask the fundamental questions everyone else is too terrified to voice.
It's a total paradigm shift.
No.
It requires completely dismantling how we are taught to navigate a career or, frankly, any major life decision.
And I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over. We focused heavily today on how being a beginner and asking those stupid questions makes an individual the most valuable person in a room. But imagine scaling that up.
Oh, that's interesting.
What would happen if entire companies or even entire industries stopped pretending they had all the answers? What if instead of rigidly climbing their corporate stairs, organizations operated like professional idiots and openly asked, why are we actually doing this?
The implications of that are staggering. It could dismantle outdated, inefficient systems practically overnight.
So bring it back to yourself. What fundamental, stupid question are you holding back right now out of fear? And what could change in your life or your workplace if you finally threw yourself on the grenade, raised your hand, and asked it?
It's a great question.
Maybe it's time to stop grinding for the next level, pull the cartridge out of the console, and decide what game you actually want to play. Thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive. We love turning the overwhelming noise of information into clear, actionable insight that you can use. Until next time, stay curious and don't be afraid to ask the dumb questions.